Well, it's really weird because the thing about it is, like, Esso was wrong on two fronts because we were referring to a tweet when he talks about whatchamacallit. He was referring to Keynesians not wanting higher taxes and also how they focus on the supply curve, which was like, he was kind of right and he was kind of wrong because there are certain cases in which Keynesians will advocate for lower taxes, but it's not because they're focusing on it from a supply side. There is a demand side explanation for it. The thought being that, well, the government doesn't need the money. They can just go into debt and continue deficit spending while continuing to give consumers more purchasing power, which will increase demand for goods and the economy will increase, the aggregate output will increase as such. So he was wrong on so many fronts, and it's, as someone who's taken econ classes on the fucking college level, he'd be laughed out of any serious discussion about economic schools of thought. What's up, Tom?
Hey, what's up?
We're just fucking shitting on neat Jesus right now.
Oh, yeah. I got a glimpse of that, but I'm not entirely filled in on all of what he's been saying, but I just saw what you were just mentioning then, the whole Keynesian economics thing, which I made a video response to like a month ago or 2 months ago now.
Yeah, and I mean, that pretty much covered it, but he's continuing to argue it because me and Volt were in some chat with him not too long ago, and he's just being so autistic about it.
Yeah, so Lynxz in the Discord, who doesn't really have much of an online presence, but either way, he made a series of graphs, I guess, just explaining basic supply and demand in the state of equilibrium, and then demand side expansion versus supply side expansion, and then how lower taxes under Keynesianism and in their basic model is it to increases spendable income of each household, which increases their consumptions and their tradings with other firms and etc. And is as being demand side and having an expansion of aggregate demand. The classic Keynesian model would just call this basic expansionary policy, and it's just typical of any Keynesian to not look at high taxes as infinitely good, like the Marxist who wants to crush the bourgeoisie and so forth with taxes and inflation, but just to look at taxes as a tool to fight recessions and so forth, whether and whether those taxes be high or low is based on context. And it's just like I didn't hear what you were saying, but I heard the last minute of you just discussing this basic thing, which is stupid.
Yeah, well, that's a part of it. And then the other larger part, which you and I have been trying to get on, is the fact that he's continuing to strawman the Hoppian position, which neither of us, I don't think any of us here entirely agree with, but he's continuing to strawman it and continuing to mention us, and then he's not even giving us a chance to defend the position that he's claiming to have full knowledge of or anything like that. So that's, pissing us off as well.
Yeah, and as someone in the chat is bringing up, he does, from what I've heard, he's been using the words proprietarian and Hoppian interchangeably. I remember when Voltaire, you debated him, and I didn't watch that debate. I don't know how it went, but I remember the title, it was like proprietarian versus ANCAP or something like that.
It was something cringy like that, right, Voltaire?
Yeah, just it's weird, like proprietarian. I think he has a Wikipedia understanding of proprietarianism.
That's a good way of describing it, actually. And I mean, though, I think the thing is with him, I think he was willing to debate you because, like, out of all the people I think he could have chosen, I think he knew that you might not have been the best prepared for it, because right now he's still, like, dodging debate left and right. Like, whenever I try to DM him or someone like Hoodie Demon or fucking anybody on this, he's constantly, like, I had him and Hoodie Demon in a DM chat for a little while, and he said he wouldn't have been comfortable doing it by himself without Hoodie, which I didn't care about as long as I got, one or both of them to debate. But then he left the chat after he kicked me from the other DM group, and then he hasn't talked to me since, even though Yax brought up the fact that he said he would be willing to debate me, which is weird.
Yeah, some time ago I was going to speak to him on Skype, and we organised a time. We weren't going to record it or anything. I just wanted to have a conversation with him, and I don't know, just some shit happened, and I can't remember what happened, but either way, it didn't get organised, and that was like a month, 2 months, or 3 months ago, and I'd like to do that again. I don't know if he'd still be interested though, because Esoteric used to send me a lot of messages wanting to collab with me, and I never wanted to, but yeah, I don't know how he'd be down now, because I've made a video calling him out, and he gets pretty autistic when it comes to dealing with criticism, and a lot of people have been telling me, because I haven't been involved in a lot of this, but I've been tagged in a lot of it, and my name has been dropped by him in DMs a lot. Like, someone sent me a screen cap of him telling Voltaire to think for himself and stop listening to TrueDilTom's bullshit opinions. And like, I don't coach Voltaire on anything. We actually have only spoken like 6 times or 7 times or so in my Discord, as opposed, like, we've never had a personal, like, one-on-one conversation anyway. So there's no it's a weird comment. Like, and it's very common of ANCAPs to kind of do the brainwashing card a lot of the time. It's which is interesting, but yeah.
It's just friggin' weird on his part, because I think it's the fact that at first he viewed you more as someone who was gonna kind of fall in line with the stereotypical Rothbardian view, and then the more you kind of digressed and became more in depth in looking into what makes a state possible, what the demand for it is, what its actual function is. I think that kind of drove him off, because he was seeing you go away that even slightly strayed from the normal way of thinking about it from the ANCAP perspective, and then that turned him off almost immediately. Like, I'd love to see him try to respond to something like your latest video with Juvenal and those guys, because it perfectly highlights why their view of like state formation, or their approach to ending the state, so to speak, would be incredibly difficult, if not almost entirely impossible.
Yeah, it's that video was originally going to be like 40 minutes long, but my computer, I usually have most of this stuff backed up, but just at the time, that script was the one thing I didn't have backed up, and my computer died. It can't find its operating system, so I lost it, and I had to like rewrite it just from remembering what I had put together. So it ended up being much shorter than it was going to be. But on that video, so the point being that it's far less in depth than what I wanted to go in that topic. But even on that video, I got people commenting that it was ridiculous to think of the demand for the state as if there is no, as I said, narrative of legitimacy that needs to be established within the governing population, and that the state, everybody is like history isn't riddled with counter revolutions and kings being beheaded and governments being overthrown, and that the state is just infinitely successful in the oppression of the governing population. It was just absurd. And I still get comments every day on that saying like Slab City is anarcho-communism, even though contrary to anarcho-communist society, there is no collective ownership of any means of production or so forth. It's like there's no one there to like, say, if you look at the Paris Commune and the Spanish Civil War in the Republican-held territories, where they would check passports for people wanting to enter and leave, and there was like strict collective control over all property, while it seems that in Slab City it's extremely individualistic, and that everybody has complete say over their own property. And I don't know. Yeah, so I'm really, you can tell I'm really tired right now. I'm trying.
No worries.
I haven't had my coffee yet.
According to Esoteric, he thinks that you're falling into a statist trap.
Well, I probably am a statist. I don't even, like, I think the most accurate label to call myself at this point would be reactionary, and I'm much more sympathetic with reactionary schools of thought and Moldbug and Imperial Energy and Pakistani and so forth than I am with any of the libertarians these days. I would say that I have no loyalty to the word libertarian, and I have no loyalty to the word statist either. I don't really care. I think it's a fucking stupid accusation, but and maybe I am a statist, and so what? And this is a common trend I've noticed with esoteric entities. Like some of the things I have seen him say, like he spends a lot of time trying to pigeonhole various ideologies into left and right. Like I saw somebody had a whole argument with him over this, like Dinesh D'Souza view on the political compass, in which just everything that's not economically conservative in the modern American sense of the word is left wing, and he was trying to pigeonhole fascism as left wing, and it's just a redundant.
I called him out.
It's just it's just a redundant conversation to have, though. It's like, okay, I don't care if I'm left or right wing. Like, it's just a means of classification. It doesn't actually change it doesn't even change the ideas you're referring to. It just changes like the label you give them for some other project, which is the constructing a political compass, which is just in itself a means of referencing things. And anyway, the point being that he spends a lot of time trying to like pigeonhole ideas as statist or not statist or left wing and so forth, and it's just a waste of time. I don't care if I'm a statist, and I don't care if I'm in the authoritarian segment on the political compass. I have no loyalty to that label. I have loyalty to the ideas that I accept as true. And I don't know. It's stupid.
Well, no, that's another big thing amongst lolberts that they've kind of really almost adopted from the left, because it's become enough to just call somebody a name and dismiss their ideas because of this other ridiculous notion that they have that's like, oh, libertarianism is the only logically consistent philosophy because of, first principles and non-contradiction, which is in an entirely meaningless statement, because most of the formal logic used for political philosophies in the West argues from that same standpoint. And it's just ridiculous to think that libertarianism has a monopoly on this idea that it's the only logical consistent ideology just because they have a few certain first principles, or that they're not even contradictory or whatever.
But pragmatic culture, you're a statist. All your criticisms of libertarians is invalid automatically. I'm arguing like a Marxist now.
I mean, yeah, it really is. And what's worse is that the reason, because this is all evolving from fucking petty ass Twitter arguments that like I've offered time and time and again to talk to these guys, and what pisses me off isn't that, they disagree, because fuck it, I still like people that disagree with me. I just want to fucking talk to them, and they don't want to talk, which is the most infuriating part. And that's kind of why I'm trying to figure out, are they afraid, or are they just being intellectually dishonest? What's like, I'm still trying to figure out the fucking catch is what I'm trying to do.
Well, it's clear that Esoteric has an ego problem. I've heard somebody say that he has told people he has an IQ of 150, which is clearly not true. Like that's like a Jordan Peterson level or something. Like you look at his videos, and the level of analysis is so small. It's crazy. Like every video he does can really just be summed up as does this violate the non-aggression principle, does it not? And using that completely binary and simplistic standard to judge everything as being interchangeably good or interchangeably bad. And then he will go on to do the snowflake liberal beat the fuck out talking points. It's just, he clearly has an ego problem, and he clearly gets a high of convincing himself that he's pwned all of these Marxists and so forth. And clearly all the videos he responds to are extremely low-hanging fruit, like 16-year-olds in their bedrooms and so forth, or like Fox News clips. And I don't know. It's clearly there's like, it's almost like the narcissistic shell breaking, and the I don't know. I don't know what his deal is either, but I'm just saying that.
Would you say that sounds right too, Voltaire?
Yeah. Also, something unrelated. I still think Shane Killing is like the best libertarian YouTuber. Like,
oof.
No, I'm just saying that because he just makes like really better. He really researches stuff. He really researches stuff for his vids,
Shane,
and he cites isn't leaving a citation. He just doesn't use like Mises.org all the time on like Esoteric Entity. Like he used
yeah.
like
I think Shane, my wife's dad, Killian, is he has like a lot of good videos from back in the day about the Great Depression and so forth. But I really think when he jumped on this bandwagon of trying to be he kind of descended back into the MS Paint avatar, Mr. Dapperton clone that we see, like even Esoteric himself to some extent, all over the internet. And I think his videos with where he's introduced his astronaut character and so forth aren't that good, but I do like a lot of his old content.
Well, I mean, he did a fairly well-researched video on immigration, one that I think is, you know, it's like Volt said, it's very well sourced. That it's not just like, you know, Mises.org, Cato Institute, yada yada yada. It's, you know, it's federal agencies he's citing, various studies conducted across multiple borders and things like that. But he's one of the people also that contributes to this first principles kind of idea that libertarianism has a monopoly on being logically consistent according to them. Because there is an old video of his where he describes the libertarian position, and he goes into it was like, oh, it's based off of this, this, and this. And I'm like, well, okay, but this isn't unique to libertarianism. So while he has his better aspects, he's still, you know, he's still a Lulbert at the end of the day.
not really. I wouldn't just disregard Shane as a Lulbert. Not really.
I mean, he's for open borders, and he has a very similar like means of responding to people that disagree with him, just like everyone here we're talking about now. Like Pragmatic, you had an interaction with him some time ago where he called you a racist.
Yeah, and that's the thing that still goes through my mind. Like, I mentioned a source from the Center for Immigration Study, which, I mean, I'm not going to deny has certainly a fairly pro-American sort of like restricted immigration kind of bias. But I told, and you know, I wasn't unwilling to admit that. But then when I asked him to challenge the numbers they provided, as opposed to just attacking them as, say, a biased source, he still wasn't really able to. And you know, you mentioned it earlier, Voltaire, with the thing where it's like you brought up a source from the Hoover Institute, and I mean that's where Thomas Sowell worked. And it was talking about Keynesianism, and all Esso had to say was it's just a no true Scotsman fallacy, and it's just like these surface level dismissals that don't actually disprove an argument are like running rampant within these Lulbertarian kind of circles.
One of the most absurd comments he made was a screen cap I saw towards Voltaire, where he accused him of his source being invalidated based on the fact that it was confirmation bias, and it made me think, well, what do you expect? He's sending you a source to confirm his beliefs. What do you want him to do? Send something that's going to falsify them? Like I just thought that was crazy.
Yeah, I think that was the same screen cap that he sent the source from the Hoover Institute, which is, I mean, I think this is the problem. Why I want to talk to these guys so much. I think they're falling into the same traps that they accuse literally everybody else of doing, where the rigorous nature of the arguments that they had, if you know they were there at any point at all, is kind of just falling apart because they feel like they've established some sort of ground, even though they're still a massive intellectual minority on not only this platform but in any major intellectual discussion in general. And it's kind of just sad to see any sort of good debate fall by the wayside because these guys are so self-assured.
Well, let's take me for example. A couple hours ago, I was in a discussion with a George's libertarian, and you know, I didn't really challenge him that much because I didn't really know what the Georgian is, but I think he explained himself pretty well. I thought he brought up some interesting points, and I rather like to learn more from him than rather just like try almost indignantly disproves him because he wanted to tax basically land value under the Georgist terminology.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's another thing. It's the you're very diverse with the people you try to go out and find Voltaire, and I give you a lot of credit for that because unlike most people, you're very willing to entertain a conversation, and as am I, and and I think as is anybody in Tom's Discord or my Discord or whatever. But these same people who claim that communists have to give them a platform, or they're being stifled from the conversation, aren't providing that same courtesy to people who have a different libertarian viewpoint. It's not even that, or if you consider it libertarian, even again, labels don't necessarily matter, but they're just being so prohibitive with the ideas they allow in their inner sanctum, and it's just doing nothing for their credibility and for their intellectual rigor of their arguments. I'm with Tom in that I have no loyalty to the word libertarian necessarily, in the same way that someone like Chris Cantwell doesn't have any loyalty to it either, but we still both kind of feel that these principles of a society where nobody is forced to do anything, that's a society we'd still like to live in at the end of the day, I think.
Yeah. Although Cantwell is an idiot. I'm just saying that.
No, that's a fair assessment. I have to admit it. I wouldn't be where I am today politically without Christopher Cantwell, but at the same time, he's horrible for optics.
Yeah.
But
all right, guys, I'm gonna get something to eat, so I'll be listening in, but catch you guys later.